Hey writers, yesterday we all took time to look through our writer's notebooks. You reread entries about falling off your scooters, about buying sweaters, staying by your grandma's side in the hospital, and getting your puppy from the dog pound. Like you, I also read through my writer's notebook. It was really cool flipping through my notebook and looking back on all these events that have happened in my life, looking at these moments and these memories. So as I was flipping through, as I told you yesterday, I realized that I had a common topic that I would write about, music. And as I read through these entries, I noticed a lot of them actually really touched on my fear of change. These music entries really weren't just about music, they were about change. Did anybody else find topics that they also write often about? Raise your hand now, let's take a look. So, as writers, we have learned that we should not write about big watermelon topics. Instead, we should really write about small seed stories. We did this in our narrative unit, brainstorming small moments. Moments with people that were important, moments with places that were important, turning points in our lives that were important. They were all small seed moments. A lot of the topics that we've come up with in the past, they actually have started as watermelon stories or these big topics, which before I've told you we shouldn't do. Well, today we're going to break those rules and I'm going to tell you that these big topics actually are okay. But instead of watermelon stories, let's call them watermelon themes or watermelon topics. A lot of these themes are topics that we have found in our writing, growing up, change, peer pressure, divorce. They're all very powerful, so we might as well take some time to write about them. So here's what I want to teach you today. A poet named Richard Price said, "The bigger the meaning, the smaller you write." Writers need to write with topics that are both big and small. We need balance. So earlier when I told you that writers don't write watermelon stories and they write seed ideas instead, that is the most simplified version. In reality, we need a little bit of both. Sometimes we start really small and we grow bigger. Sometimes we start big and we narrow it down from there. Either way, the literature that we're writing, it needs both big meaning and tiny details. In our first unit, narrative, we started with tiny moments and we asked ourselves, what is this story really about? Then we revised our stories to find deeper meanings within those tiny moments. Like I said, we need a balance of both big and small. So let's take a look at some published writing. We're going to take a look at a sports column from an article called Commercial Appeal, or from a column called Commercial Appeal. And as I read it, what I want you to do is notice the way the author starts about writing memories, but then shifts to writing about ideas and life lessons. So he's interpreting his life just as you would interpret books. Let's take a look. The games I remember most from my childhood aren't Little League or hoops. Instead, the game I remember most was penny pitching. This was usually played in the hospital waiting rooms. I grew up with leukemia and spent a lot of time in hospital waiting rooms. To pass the time, my mother would take off her shoe, push it onto the middle of the rug, and we'd take turns pitching pennies into her shoe. Now, when people ask me what it was like growing up with leukemia, I do not tell them about the scabs around my mouth or the IV lines. Instead, I tell them what I remember most is the thrill of the perfect arc and the soft thud as the penny landed squarely in my mom's shoe. I'm writing this column not because this has anything to do with Memphis or sports, but because I do not want another year to go by without saying thanks. My mother took a potentially scary time and made it sweet. And isn't that the lesson of September 11th? Whatever it is we have been meaning to do, we need to do it and do it now. Write that letter. Go for that job. Make that phone call. Not because at any moment a plane might come out of the heavens and reduce our world to smithereens, but because we are still here on this fragile spinning earth, and never has that seemed so precious. So we're going to take a moment to turn and talk. So I'll pause the video in just a moment. As you are talking, I want you to discuss what you notice about how Jeff wrote both big and small. I'll pause the video now so we can turn and talk. So it looks like Jeff wrote about small moments. He started with that penny pitching. He started with, he was talking about the struggles of growing up with leukemia, but then he connected it to a bigger theme of just appreciating life and appreciating what we have, not fretting the small stuff. So you would notice those small moments leading to a bigger theme. Let's take a look. I'm going to read from another article. So let's take a look over here. Because it was actually pretty fun making this lesson, because to make it, I needed to think about a time when someone wrote a big thought. It was finding examples to do this. So I had to find someone who wrote a big thought but wrote small in order to show its real truth. And it doesn't seem fair for me to have all the fun. I'm going to read you a bit of a famous writer's memoir, and I want you to think about what her idea might be, her theme, and notice how her story and her theme fit together. So this is from the memoir Little by Little by Jean Little. Early in the book, Jean sets out to climb a tree, and her neighbor Marilyn restrains her from doing so, saying, "You have bad eyes." So here's our first excerpt. "I do not have bad eyes," I told her defiantly. "If your mother said that, she's wrong. My mother never said so, and my mother is a doctor, so she'd know. My father is a doctor too, and he never said so either. They both said I can climb any tree I like." So Marilyn is also very persistent in this memoir. She continues to taunt Jean, saying, "You do so have bad eyes," until Jean runs into the house to her mother. So now she's in the house. "What is it, Jean?" she asked in a quiet, calming voice. "Marilyn says her mother says I have bad eyes." I burst out, my words sputtering in their rush to get said. "She said I can't climb the tree because it's dangerous if you have bad eyes. I don't have them, do I? I can climb trees, can't I?" Mother did not hesitate. I can still hear the words that set my world turning on its axis again. "You do have bad eyes," she said. "But go right ahead and climb the tree." So Jean had some small writing Jean Little had some small writing that was really supporting a larger message. So we're going to turn and talk. I'll pause the video in just a moment. How does Jean's small writing, talking about this tree, how does that support her larger message? Pause the video now. So writers, today, if you have been writing small, I want you to ask yourself, what is the big theme or issue here? And if you have been writing about a big theme or issue, I want you to pause and think, what small moments may be inside here? It's all about that balance. So remember, writers, that so far this year you have learned a handful of strategies for generating writing ideas. Some of those strategies help you generate small moment stories. Some help you generate big ideas. But by now, you've learned that writers can begin with either of those, big ideas or small moments, as long as they write their way toward the other. So we're going to end the video here and take a look at our chart, ways to bring out the big ideas in a story.